Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 p.m. and the April 3rd City Council meeting will now come to order. This evening's invocation is presented by Council Member Livingstone.
Good evening. Would you please join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion, allow us to grow closer as a group, and nurture the bonds of the Bella Beach community. I ask, Lord Jesus, that you protect all those that reside in the Bella Beach community. I ask that you protect the police, the first responders, and to come alongside those that are struggling today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Now please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Gentry, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Frank Banker,
Present.
Councilmember Belinda Livingstone,
Present.
Councilmember Leslie Notero,
Present.
Councilmember Lloyd Roberts,
Here.
Councilmember Mike Zabel,
Here.
Vice Mayor Jody Shirley,
Here.
Mayor Dave Gaddis,
Here.
City Manager Kyle Riefler,
Here.
and City Attorney Randy Mora.
Present. Thank you, Patty. Now we move right on to item number 1, which is concerned with the agenda. In light of raised concerns, I would like to insert as item 24, authorize the city attorney to draft an ordinance to address section 38-87 of our city code and change numbers 24 and 25 to 25 and 26 respectively. Do I have a motion to amend the agenda? Motion to move. Motion made by Frank Banker. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to give that one to Jody Shirley. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The amended agenda is approved. All right, now we move on to citizen comments. If any citizen would like to address the council about a topic not already on the agenda, please raise your hand and wait to be called on. We ask that you limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. If any council member would like to respond to citizen comments, please hold your responses until we reach council comments. If the city manager or city attorney would like to address citizen comments, please hold your responses until your designated reporting times. Would any citizens like to address the council about a topic not already on tonight's agenda? Yes, sir. Please come up and give us your name and address.
John Hansick, 22nd Street. Mr. Mayor, Council, I know recently we discussed a study on the traffic situation at Gulf and Bel Air or Causeway. My personal observation is when I make the left on the Causeway Boulevard, I'm finding more and more vehicles straddling both lanes. The outside lane is straddling the inside lane, and I'm fearful that at some point there's going to be a major incident with side swipes. If someone could, during council comments, give us an update as to where the study is, I personally would be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick. Any other citizen comments? Yes.
Hi, my name is Nicole Sussman, and I'm representing the Bel Air Beach Community Foundation. Just a few things I just wanted to address real quick. Our next bridge cleanup will be April 15th from 9 to 11 a.m. And we meet here in the parking lot at City Hall to check in. We will provide gloves, vests, bags, and a little bit of the pickers, so you don't have to use your hands if you don't want to. We also will have water and snacks for you. If you can't make it on the 15th, We do this once a quarter, so the next one after that will be July 15th. The next thing is our Sunset Social celebrating Earth Day. It's our first event for the foundation, which we're super excited about. That will take place on April 22nd from 6 to 9 here at City Hall. The attire is casual. We would love for you to join us for music, dancing, and fun. It's a $10 minimum donation at the door. Food will be provided by Clean Eats and available for purchase. We will be selling drink and raffle tickets, and we will accept cash, credit cards, and Venmo for this event. All proceeds will go to the new 16th Street Kayak Launch. And then the other update I just wanted to give was for our brick program. So our first install will be April 17th, which we're really excited about for the bricks to be here at City Hall. And then just to give an update, if anyone purchased a brick after the first install, we need a total of 16 bricks in order to do the second install. So it might be a little bit of a wait time. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us on the foundation board, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Feel free to always check our website for any updates, and feel free to follow us on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Husband. Any other citizen comments? All right, citizen comments are closed. And now we move on to item number 3, which is a presentation from the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, beginning with the Law Enforcement Monthly Report.
Good evening, Sergeant Roy Switch, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and tonight I am presenting the activity for the month of February 2023. I'll start with the UCR property and person crimes, and for that month we had 2 assaults, and I looked them up and they looked like they were both domestic related. For that month we had 6 total arrests for the domestic related incident, possession of narcotics, and then a warrant arrest. For deputy activity for that month, we had 603 total events. Leading that was directed patrols and traffic enforcement. For crashes, we had 3. 2 were at Gulf Boulevard and Causeway, and another one was at 2000 Gulf Boulevard. And then finally, there were 149 citations and warnings issued for that month. And it looks like combined, obviously, in that is going to be the boating citations and warnings, as well as parking citations along with traffic. And that is all I have.
Council, questions or comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Roberts.
Yes, thank you. Do you have any details, I'm just curious, on the Causeway and Gulf Boulevard accident?
I don't have any specific details for that. I do not.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you, Sergeant. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Right now, we're on to the Code Enforcement Monthly Report.
Good evening, Steve Klatka for the record. As far as the code enforcement for the month of March, we did some different things this time around. I did spend one day out on the water with a Marine deputy, and we actually went throughout the whole city checking out. We've had some issues with some docks. We did find 4 violations that we are working on now. The other issue we've had is a short-term rental. We're having on 13th Street since December up until today. We've had 4 violations, and 3 of those violations were actually done in the last week. Those reports have been filed and will be sent to the city manager to set up for a hearing on that particular home. Other than that, we have done a lot of cleanup with a lot of the residents. And one of them, particularly on 21st Street, we finally got the house cleaned up. We're working on a couple more, one on 17th and one on 6th. But those slow process, but we're getting them done. Other than that, we had a few more complaints as far as construction, licensing, and no permits, which have been addressed and taken care of through the building department and licensing board.
Council?
Sure. Two questions. They're both on the second page. Why is a burglary to residence a code violation?
Well,
Same with the follow-on after that solicitor.
yes, what had happened was, if there's a call for service, I was right down the street from that, so I responded to it, so I actually handled it. It actually turned out to be that solicitor handing out materials out on the street. So unfortunately, because the way the call is classified, we had to reclassify it, and then I met with the individual, because we caught him up on Howard, and issued him a warning as far as no solicitation within the city limits whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Livingstone.
There's an error on your monthly code enforcement report. You're showing unpermitted remodel at 112th 6th Street. I believe you mean 113. If you want to repeat that, please.
Okay, I didn't catch that. Which page is that on?
It's on the first page, go down towards the bottom.
Okay, we will correct that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? No? Thank you, Deputy. I appreciate it.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, we are up to item 4, which is a presentation from Heather Barnoli, CPA of Andrew Test, CPA LLC, of the fiscal year 2022 financial overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all for inviting me to speak this evening. I know you have a lot going on, so I'll go quickly. I'm going to provide a quick overview of the budget and actual for 22. I'm going to discuss some items I'd like you to consider as we start developing the budget for the upcoming year. So these are my numbers. These are my numbers, people. These spreadsheets on here are pages out of the audit that you received the draft last month. So the first one is the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the city. You'll see here that all areas of revenue were over budget, so they were favorable variances. And then below that, you'll see that all areas of the expenditures were under budget, so you had positive results in both. So the very first line is the ad valorem taxes. That's the largest single item of revenue for the city. So when you start to consider the budget for 24, I just wanted to point out that historically we've budgeted 96% of the ad valorem taxes that could be collected. And the reason for that is that we're expecting that all residents are going to take advantage of the early payment discount. So if you can picture on your tax bill, like the November payment amount is less, and then as you get closer to March, it gets up to the full amount. So it's a very conservative way to budget. You see on here that we were over the budgeted amount, and that's because not everybody did take advantage of that early payment discount. So on June 1st, we'll get the first estimate of the taxable values of your city, and then we'll start the process of establishing the millage rate from there. At the podium that you've got tonight is the full budget calendar, and then my last slide is just a couple of highlighted dates that I'd like you to put on your calendar. So if we keep on going down the list, you'll see the franchise fees and utility taxes. That's from Duke Energy, Pinellas County Utilities. Below that is intergovernmental revenue. That's state-derived revenue that gets passed on to us. We've got charges for services. That's a big number. That's the garbage and refuse from Pinellas County Utilities. That particular number is shown as revenue at the top, and then it gets offset by the amount that we pay to waste management down in the expenditures. We've also got in that charges for services are the community center rental, site plan reviews, the marina payment that gets transferred to the general fund, and then code violation fees. And as you know, the auditor commented during his presentation, and then also actually in the note disclosures in the financial statements this year, we've got a resident that has a substantial amount in code violations that are owed to the city. Just as part of the disclosure requirements, that was a big increase from prior year, so we had to include that in the audit report. We don't have an allowance against that amount, so there's not a reduction shown in the amount that we're anticipating being received at the time that the audit report was done, and even, through date. There's no indication that any amount is going to be forgiven, so that full amount is shown in the accounting records at this point in time. And just so you know, when that case is settled, if the full amount is not received, we'll show a bad debt expense at that point in time. So I know that's going to have to be on your radar coming up. It is a substantial amount. So if we keep on going down the line, below that is fines. Those are parking tickets. Licenses and permits are the beach parking passes, parking meters, registrations. We've got interest on investments, which was well over budget. That's because of higher interest rates than we have projected, and the SBA, even this year, every month is increasing the interest rate, so that's very good. And then lastly, miscellaneous, the bulk of that amount for this year, 22, was the insurance payment that we got for the sign that fell down out front. So that's a higher number than normal. So if we keep on moving down the list, you've got the expenditures, and each line item here is a summarization of a lot of accounts within, all the departments. So you've got general government, and that number is made out of the city council expenses, the clerk, finance, non-departmental, and IT. It all gets summarized into that number there. We've got public safety, so that's police protection and code enforcement. Physical environment is public works and the trash. Culture and recreation is the park maintenance and library card reimbursements. And then you get down to capital outlay. And so you'll see that we were under budget for that. And that's because all of the projects that were budgeted weren't started during the year. So when this happens, we monitor that amount. It's kind of like a savings account. We're earmarking the money that's left in this fund, we're saving it up, and then when the expense comes, we know that we have accounted for that money in past years, we're saving it up. Or we abandon the project. That doesn't happen a lot here. You guys are pretty good at sticking to the plan. So the largest impact on this fund was not making the anticipated transfers to the other funds. So you'll see here that the general fund had, and this changed from the draft to the actual. On your paper it says deficiency of revenues under expenditures, but it was actually revenues exceeded the expenditure. So this, as you can see, was the draft, and that has been fixed. So it was a big year for the general fund. But by the time the fiscal year 23 budget was prepared, we had a lot closer estimate of the timing of the big project. So we know that although they didn't start in 22, the money will be needed, in this year 23. So at the very bottom, you'll see the end of the year fund balance is over 5.4 million. So it's a very healthy amount left in that fund. Do you want to ask questions right now, or do you want me to keep on going?
Any questions?
Any questions?
Mr. Baker?
Did I hear you right, you said on that miscellaneous, that was just the sign out front?
A lot of it is, yep.
You know how much?
I want to say in excess of $30,000 you got for that?
I thought we received a insurance windfall of over 35.
Okay, could have been 35.
No, I mean, so that would be a plus.
I'm sorry.
Wouldn't that be a plus? That's the money that we got back on it? It's not-
Oh, no, it wasn't that much in excess of the cost of the new sign, no. We got reimbursed and then we spent the money on that new sign.
So we got 35 and the new sign cost us 40. She won't get
That sounds about
$5,000.
right. Well, so we can't show the revenue and then cancel out that revenue because then it doesn't really show the full picture. So we have to show it as revenue and then a separate expenditure. So it'll be in two different places.
Yeah, that was my question. I just, concerned where you book it. So when we're going forward into the budget process, we're going to understand that this is not really a windfall, that it's already offset. And
Correct.
bank on that. Second one, and this is more personal, can you double the font sizes on these things? We're trying to make decisions up here, and most of us really can't read this
Oh,
font.
okay, sure.
Thanks. That was that.
the capital projects fund. So the revenue here is intergovernmental revenue, and you'll see that there's a big budget amount here. That includes our penny money, and then the amount that would have gone to Bel Air Shores for the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding project. That gets diverted to us because we're overseeing the project. I say we, but it's not me. I don't want to make any misunderstanding there. So we had about $930,000 budgeted as reimbursement revenue from that, and then that offsets the same amount in expenditures down below. When you see the line item for capital outlay, that's also a big number. So there's $930,000 in revenue and then $930,000 in the expenditure. Again, the same concept as what we were discussing. Got to show it separately. So that project is well underway this year. As you know, over $1 million has been spent so far. We've gotten back about $966,000 in reimbursements from Pinellas County. And then we'll submit for the next reimbursement when phase 1 is finished. So for this year, 23, we'll have much higher revenue and much higher expenditures than you're seeing here in these numbers. The capital outlay in this fund, it had the audio video upgrades here, some boat ramps, seawalls, and then in the budgeted amounts, it's another savings program. We're saving for the roof on this building and the carpet and some seawalls and streetlights and things like that. So things to consider as you're moving forward, the projects that you want to move forward with. The debt service here is the debt service on this building, the city hall, and then the special assessment bonds. And then moving further down the page, no transfers were needed from the general fund because the big projects weren't started. We have budgeted for street resurfacing, street lights, bridge work, but it didn't need that influx of money yet. So the bottom line of this fund is that we actually used about $61,000, but there's still over $600,000 left in this fund. Any questions before I move on?
Council?
Okay, next up is the Marina Fund. So the revenue here is charges for services, so it's the slip rentals, parking fees. We were under budget a little bit because the parking fees were a little bit less than we had expected. If you recall, after the beaches opened, when we were in the middle of COVID, we had a huge amount of parking revenue citywide. So that's been dropping off a little bit. People have to go back to work. And so the new rates, the new slip rentals are in effect this month. All the renters have been notified. Most of the costs in this fund, like the very first line says materials and supplies, and a lot of what makes up that number is that we budget whatever amount we're projecting as profit in this fund, we transfer that to the general fund, and that's what makes up the most expense here. And so as long as I've been here, we've made that the Marina Fund has been able to make that full transfer to the general fund. So even with that full budgeted transfer being made, the Marina Fund made another $10,000 in profit, and then there's still, as you can see, about $365,000 in this fund. Any question? Okay. And then here we have the stormwater fund. The stormwater assessment revenue comes to us from Pinellas County Utilities. You'll see that we have personnel services here. The actual expenses were $32,080.50. The auditors rounded up, and that drives my OCD crazy. You'll see that it's $1 under or over. That won't happen again. So that's 15% of the public works salaries. We move over to the stormwater fund. And as you move forward with the budgeting process, I feel comfortable with that amount again. You can discuss it as you get to that point. We have contractual services. That one was significantly under budget because we had planned on spending over $105,000 on the NPDES compliance, and then the city ended up doing that analysis in-house. That was a big project. Kyle did a great job. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to say that he's doing a great job in my presentation tonight, but here it is. And Patty too, and Laura, and everybody here, really. I mean, honestly, it's a great place to work, and I know you don't ever get to hear that from my perspective, but it's worth saying. I feel very fortunate to work here. So next is depreciation. This fund was new in '21. It was the first year. So when we were developing the budget for this year, we didn't really have a great idea of what that number should have been. But for the budget in '23, we did include depreciation, and we have a much better idea going forward. But when you look at this on the whole, that number was over budget, but then the contractual services was under, so they offset, so we're still within the rules. So we've had a lot of discussions about the stormwater improvements, and that will continue, so I won't go into it. But we do have good numbers to develop the budget for the upcoming year. And this fund, it did come close to sustaining itself. It only had a loss of $2,740, but then it did need $25,000 transferred from the general fund. And then the remaining fund balance here is $1.7 million, but that's not cash, that's the infrastructure of that stormwater system. So you'll be talking about taking on debt for the upcoming improvements to accelerate that plan. Again, not trying to steal Chris Rhodes' thunder. Any questions on this one?
Council?
No, I do have a question. What are we depreciating? Is it
It's the stormwater improvements.
the
So,
improvements themselves?
yes ma'am, so we have, like for all of the capital items, we have a very detailed listing. With each item is depreciated by itself, and then it rolls up into one big number.
What part of that? Is it check valves or pipe?
I'm sorry, sir, that's not a question for me.
Yeah, it'd be the curves, the pipe, and then the check valve, all the components of the system, the boxes, the inlets.
Okay, thank you.
And is that scheduled based on the new improvements, or is that where was it scheduled created from?
Oh, that comes from actual expenses. So however much we put into service in any year, that gets added to the list, and then that total cost gets depreciated over the life of whatever they have.
The newest project.
Yeah.
So theoretically, whenever we do the bulk of these projects, going forward this next year, we'll have a large depreciation.
Yes, yeah, you'll see a substantial increase. So tonight I'm showing revenue and expenditures. We're not showing the balance sheet, but the costs of all the big items that are capitalized are on the balance sheet. So you'll see a large amount of infrastructure for the sewer and the equipment and the different properties and things. And then, yes, so we'll depreciate that value over time.
Any other questions or comments?
So my last slide is what I'd like you to put in your calendars. These are the key dates for you guys. I did print out a detailed budget schedule, a budget calendar. A lot of that is external parties, deadlines that we've set for ourselves. But these are the meetings that we'd like you to be around for. The budget workshop is on June 19th. July 17th is when you're going to need to adopt the millage rate. And then the September meetings are the important ones, to have those public hearings. So if you have any questions, this is the full schedule. And the full schedule talks more about like that June 1st deadline, the first time the property appraiser sends us the estimate of the taxable values. And then, the property appraiser certifications, those are forms that we fill out and, sign online. It's an automated process now. So I just wanted you to have a full understanding of the whole budget process. And that's it for me tonight. If you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Council, going once?
I just want to say thanks for coming. I think this is the first time you guys have appeared at our meetings since we contracted with you all, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you.
I think it's going to be helpful. Will you attend any of these budget meetings at all? And the reason I'm asking is because, I see we've got $625,000 surplus. And, just maybe some guidance, and is there a way we can tighten that number a little bit in the scheme of things in this budget, which isn't a very big budget, that's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And so what I did want to definitely point out tonight, like for the general fund especially, like you did have a big year. But we need that money now. So yes, I'll be as involved as you'd like me to be. Kyle and I meet a lot and we discuss things and get down into the details and then bring it to you. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Guadagnoli, I appreciate it. All right,
Good job.
now we are up to item 5. This is a presentation from the Pinellas Suncoast Fire and Rescue District. Welcome, Chief Jeff Davidson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Davidson, your fire chief, Pinellas Suncoast Fire Rescue. I wanted to give you an update on the fire department and how we are trying to improve the emergency services on the beaches, specifically to Bel Air Beach. There has been response time compliance challenges to this area for a very long time. I was identified by the county in 2009, and to date, the same problem exists. The county has a response time of 7.5 minutes standard. It has to be met 90% of the time, and it's not being met. These areas up here have 77 and 87% coverage. Nobody can meet the response times. Not Pinellas Suncoast, not our partners in Clearwater, not our partners in Largo. And why is that? Well, one of the reasons for response times is the geographical coverage that's needed on the beaches. Right, we are a barrier island. We have multiple bridges with limited access. We have narrow roads with low speed limits. We have severe pedestrian and vehicle traffic, and every year 10% increase in call volume. I say nobody can meet those response times. Last month in March, we had 17 responses to this area, 16 emergency. They were handled with Pinellas Suncoast, Clearwater, and Largo. And 31% of those calls did not meet the response times. And that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to me, and it should not be acceptable to you. Another reason for the lack in coverage to this area is the fire stations on the beaches average about 2.4 miles apart from each other. And Pinellas Suncoast Station and Clearwater Station is 5.6 miles apart. And with the call volume and the amount of resources that are needed on calls, that's just simply too far apart. So this year, every year around February, March, there's a process where we put in for our ALS first responder needs for the next fiscal year, similar to what you're starting to do here. And I've asked the county to fund us 2 additional paramedics, firefighters per day, as well as an ALS, Advanced Life Support, transport capable unit for the beaches. And that will improve those response times. We're looking at a piece of property on the northern end of Indian Rocks Beach where we're planning to build a fire station, and more than likely we would move the fire truck there. And that would have 3 firefighter and paramedics on there. Now this is already paid for. It's already paid for by the citizens. You already pay into the EMS fund for the county. And there's a need for this service, and you're just not getting it. And I'm fighting for that, to improve the services. I've been doing this for 35 years. I know how this goes and what should be provided, and it's not being provided. So I submitted a letter to the county asking for the enhancement. I've left a copy on the back table there, along with some contact numbers, email addresses of the county commission, because the next step in the process is I'm meeting one-on-one with all the county commissioners to explain why we need this. And they, similar to what you do, is you decide on what are the priorities for your budget. And this is a priority for this budget. Okay? These residents deserve this service, they need this service, and they pay for this service. And they're not getting it from the county. So I ask for your support. If you could take a copy of my letter, read through it. My phone number is on there. You can contact me with any questions. And a letter of support to the county commission would really help. Perhaps some dialogue there. And any questions that I could answer for you, I'm happy to do so.
Council? Chief, are you still leaving business cards back here?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Chief, because you weren't at the last EMS advisory meeting, I did speak on your behalf, and I believe one of your assistant chiefs spoke.
Yes, sir.
And the response was not exactly what I expected. It was more, I thought that they would be more sympathetic to what you were asking for. And it just seemed like they were trying to put a Band-Aid on this problem that we have here. So I would advise everyone to please reach out to your county commissioners and give them a little nudge.
Please.
Unfortunately, if you're waiting on the EMS advisory board to push it forward, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
And sometimes, just like with beach nourishment, sometimes you kind of have to jump ahead and jump the chain of command to get things done whenever the lower levels don't respond. So keep fighting the good fight, and just to confirm, what the plan is even if you get the extra personnel, they will be stationed in Indian Rocks Beach until you're able to build a new station. Is that correct?
Sort of. So we have that lined up. The property is 3 miles from your city borders. And once I know that this funding is going to come through, we'll finalize the property acquisition there, but I'll put temporary housing the very next day on there. So we'll be running that service the minute this gets approved.
Great. Deal. And that's going to bridge the gap. Right now, you said it's about 6 miles?
Yes, sir. Depending on which map you look, 5.6 miles between Pinellas Suncoast Indian Rock Station and the Clearwater Station 44. And many times, these responses require multiple units. There's many times that the beaches are empty. There's that many emergency calls going on at one time, and we don't have that many units on the beaches because each fire station only has 1 unit in the fire station. There's only 1 fire truck or a specialty unit or a rescue truck. And that rescue truck would definitely enhance the response times, but also it enhances the service because right now we rely on a private ambulance company to do the transports. And they said at their last meeting they're down 40 paramedics, which means we're waiting for them and waiting for them. There's times that we're waiting a very long time, where with a transport capable unit, our own ambulance, right, staffed with 2 paramedic firefighters, in situations like that, we would be able to take you to emergency right away. We pull up on scene to a traumatic injury, we're not waiting for the ambulance. We're going to treat you and get you to the surgeon, the emergency room, as soon as possible. So.
And so what they're saying right now is that the way they're accommodating us is they're providing us with, I call it volume service, anticipated volume service. Well, you can't predict when an emergency is going to happen.
Yes, sir.
So posting somebody nearby whenever they think an emergency is going to happen is not, that's not an acceptable answer. And so again, I appreciate everything you're doing, and I appreciate the monthly reports.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? All right, thank you very much, Chief. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, as you may or may not know, next May begins the start of sea turtle nesting season. And last year we had a presentation by Ms. Lindsay Flynn, and everyone was so happy with the presentation and entertained by it that I invited her to come back again. I tried to get her at the 1st of May, but she said for some reason she's too busy. So welcome back, Lindsay, and please let's hear your presentation.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me this evening. Again, my name is Lindsay Flynn. I'm the Sea Turtle Conservation Program Manager at Clearwater Breeding Aquarium, just up the road here. And I am going to be speaking to you tonight about sea turtle nesting here in Pinellas County. And I'm going to start my presentation by asking you some trivia questions, and I hope you'll participate with me. So, how many species of sea turtles are there in the world? Throw out a number. 30,000? Any other guesses? Take a guess.
20.
20. Any other guesses?
47.
47. Thank you for your participation. There are 7 species of sea turtles in the world. Yeah. All right, next question. Of these 7 species, how many of them nest in the state of Florida? All of them? None of them?
7.
7 of them?
3.
3 of them? 1 of them? 5. We get up to 5 of them, which is amazing. Almost all species of sea turtles nest here in the state of Florida. But 3 of them are more common. So the one to your left here, that's the largest species of sea turtle. It's called the leatherback. The middle one is our important species here. It's called the loggerhead sea turtle. I'll talk more about that in just a second. And the one all the way to your right, the right there, is called the green sea turtle. Okay. Now, you may or may not know we do have sea turtle nesting even here in the city of Bel Air Beach. And the official sea turtle nesting season is May 1st through October 31st. We primarily get the loggerhead sea turtle nesting here. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about their nesting process. So that process starts with the adult female emerging from the surf zone at night. And she's going to crawl up the beach somewhere typically between the high tide line and the primary dune, trying to select an appropriate nest site. We actually don't know the criteria that they use to select that nest site. We think it might have something to do with temperature, maybe proximity to the dune line, but we still don't know that. That's more for research purposes. Okay, once she selects that nest site, she's going to prepare the nest site by creating something called a body bit, a shallow depression in the sand, and she does that by pushing the surface sand away with her front flippers. Next, she's going to create something called the egg chamber, or the egg cavity, and she's going to do that by curling her rear flippers like a shovel, and she's going to dig a hole in the sand that kind of looks like an upside-down light bulb. And what's cool about this part of the process is she does that by feeling. She can't look behind her and see how she's doing, so she feels how that feels, and once she can't bring up any more sand, she knows it's time to lay her eggs. Loggerhead sea turtles will deposit somewhere between 80 and 120 eggs per nest. And she will lay anywhere from 1 to 8 nests in a season, although it's more typical for her to lay 4 to 5 nests in a season every 2 weeks. That is a lot of work for her, so she does not lay nests every year. She typically lays nests every 2 to 4 years. Once she's done with that, she's simply going to work backwards. So she's going to use her rear flippers to cover the eggs with sand. She's then going to camouflage the site and the scent of that nest by sort of casting sand about with her front flippers, and it sort of makes a very fluffy nest site. When she's done with that, she's simply going to turn around and return to the sea. She does not provide any maternal care for her nest. She'll come back in about 2 weeks, but only to lay another nest. She's not going to check on her other nest while she's up there. So that nest is going to incubate for about 2 months underneath the sand, and then those hatchlings are going to emerge together at night and hopefully make their way directly towards the water. We're going to talk about why that may not happen. But now that we know that sea turtle nests here in Bel Air Beach, why should we care? Well, there's legal reasons to care. They are protected under both state and federal law. They're protected at the federal level through the Endangered Species Act, and at the state level through the Marine Turtle Protection Act. There's also ecological reasons. So Florida hosts more than 90% of all loggerhead nesting activities in North America. More importantly, I should state here that that black line around the state of Florida is where loggerhead sea turtle nesting occurs. So it occurs nearly around the entire coastline of the state. And the only reason it doesn't occur in the Big Bend area is because the Big Bend is marshland and sea turtles need sandy beaches in order to nest. Now, more interestingly, internationally, Florida is one of 2 primary nesting sites for the loggerhead sea turtle in the entire world. Oman, the country of Oman, is the other location. If you don't remember where Oman is from your geography class, it is in the Arabian Peninsula, right next to Yemen and Saudi Arabia. So I think it's really cool that little Florida is a really important nesting site for this sea turtle. But what is sort of scary about that is the country of Oman is seeing decline in loggerhead sea turtle nesting by as much as 79%. That means, arguably, Florida is the #1 nesting site for the loggerhead sea turtle in the entire planet. So that has implications. So as the nesting population goes here in the state of Florida, so goes the global population of loggerhead sea turtle. So we have a responsibility to protect our loggerhead sea turtle nests to the best of our ability because it can affect their global population. Other ecological reasons. I think this is kind of timely right now because we're talking about beach renourishment. Sea turtles help stabilize the beach, and I will tell you how. So, when they lay their nests, not all their eggs are going to produce hatchlings. Some of them just simply aren't fertilized. So they're going to end up breaking down eventually. And when they do that, those eggs are going to release things like nitrogen and phosphorus that can be used by the dune vegetation to grow and grow their root system. And by doing that, that then stabilizes the sand and builds up the dunes. So stabilizing the beach, of course, maintains important nesting habitat for sea turtles and shorebirds and seabirds. They are an important part of the process. There we go. There's also economic reasons. So Visit St. Pete Clearwater recently released a report that said tourism brings $10.8 billion to the county. So we want our tourists to come here to spend their money. And sea turtles can help you do that. So there was a marketing analysis done recently, and during that marketing analysis, American travelers were asked if they want to be more proactive in reducing the impact of their travel on the environment. And nearly 40% of individuals said, yes, that is important to me. So that means that travelers want to be conscious of what they're doing and the impact they have on the environment. Why not let them know that they can have an impact on sea turtle nesting? And I'll tell you how they can do it in just a little bit. Also, they found that travelers want more authentic, less commercial travel experiences. So they want to go somewhere they feel good about going to. So what is the destination doing to set their destination apart from typical commercial experiences? What's more authentic than a destination caring for its precious marine resources like their sea turtles? We can fit all of these criteria if we just do more to care about our nesting sea turtles. Finally, so they were asked, please think deeply about what motivates you to travel. What really fuels your desire to travel right now? And one of the tier 1 motivators was creating memories and experiencing new places. And what cooler way to create a memory or experience a new area than to know that where you're staying at hosts sea turtle nesting, and to be a part of that experience by, maybe taking a morning walk and seeing a new crawl, or maybe taking a look at those marked sites and calling to see, when they have a concern. Maybe they see a hatchling sea turtle and they can be a part of that by reporting it. They also found that a tier 2 motivator is going somewhere where interesting things happen and learning something and expanding their perspective. We have an opportunity to do that with our nesting sea turtles. I think nesting sea turtles are pretty interesting, and I think your tourists would find the same thing. Have an opportunity to teach them something, expand their perspective, and go and show them what interesting things happen right here. So, things that we can talk to them about while they're here is reducing their obstructions and reducing light pollution and sea turtle disorientations. So, one of the things that they don't tend to think about is that leaving their tents and their toys and things on the beach can negatively impact sea turtles. Remember, they come on the beach at night to lay their nests. If they encounter something they're not expecting, like that pile of toys you see there, they're going to be adverse to that. They're probably going to return to the water without laying a nest. It's called a false crawl. Now, it's possible that our sea turtles can come ashore that same night or within a few nights to lay a successful nest. But if they keep coming ashore and keep encountering these items, they will eventually turn to the water and they will release those eggs into the water, and those eggs are now no longer viable. So we've now reduced the potential number of hatchlings we could have produced had those items not been on the beach. And there's plenty of instances, unfortunately, where sea turtles have come ashore. You can see their crawl track right near those holes there, where she came ashore and simply could not locate a proper place to nest because these items were in the way. Sandcastles and holes can do the same thing. Sometimes they can crawl over it like you see here, or sometimes they crawl right on in it. And if they experience that, they can leave without nesting as well. Something else that can negatively impact sea turtles is artificial lighting. So you can see here the nighttime image of the state of Florida. You can see areas where there's lots of lighting. The Miami area, Orlando, Jacksonville, and here in Pinellas County. Interestingly, Pinellas County is the most densely populated county for humans in the state of Florida. We like to use a lot of light at night for safety, security, and providing a well-lit place for our tourists to go. But how does that affect our turtles? Well, under natural conditions, both adults and hatchling sea turtles use brightness as a guide to find the water at night. So normally, moonlight and starlight, called celestial light, is bouncing off of the water, creating a bright horizon, and that's contrasting with the darkness over the land. So they're able to follow that bright light right towards the water. Now, here in Pinellas County, we're well developed. We have lots of white artificial light on at night, which competes with the celestial light. Sea turtles will go to whatever light is brightest. So if that artificial light is brighter, they will go towards that, and they will find themselves in areas where they should not be. Pools, hot tubs, parking lots, storm drains, in the middle of Gulf Boulevard, where they can and they have been run over by cars. So the rule of thumb for artificial lighting is if you're standing normally on the beach and you can see the light, so too can the turtle, so we need to do something about it. Okay, so here's an example of an adult sea turtle crawl track. So that crawl track is coming towards you. Way back there is our nesting truck, but that is where the nest was laid. So she spent a lot of time crawling along the beach or when she should not have. Remember, we talked about as soon as she's done laying her nest, she returns right back towards the water. So the fact that she spent all of this time crawling along the beach tells us that there was some sort of artificial light source that was impeding her ability to get back towards the water. And that's a problem because she only has so much energy to lay these nests. So she may not come ashore to lay another nest later because she just runs out of energy. And again, that's going to impact our overall population over time. I'm going to warn you that the next couple of photos are graphic, and I only show you this because this is a consequence of the prevalence of artificial light here in Pinellas County. So remember we talked about that sea turtles could find their way to areas where they should not be, and that does include the roadway. That includes adults and hatchlings. We have had adult sea turtles cross Gulf Boulevard after they are done nesting and very nearly get hit by cars. This is an instance here where this female was struck by a vehicle down south. You can see that she was carrying eggs, and those will no longer be viable, so those have now been removed from the population. That can happen very prevalently with our hatchlings as well. And even if they don't manage to find the roadway, they can use precious energy sort of wandering about the beach just trying to find the water. They only have so much energy to find the water, and they need that energy because their goal once they reach the water is to swim to this offshore weed line. It's called the Sargassum weed line, where they rest and feed for their first few years of life.
they're wandering the beach, they no longer have the energy to get out there, so they're very likely to be predated by birds and fish along the way. While they're wandering the beach, they're also susceptible to predation by coyotes. We've seen them out on the beach. Coyotes, raccoons, bird species, they can be predated by all of them. This is just another example, unfortunately, if it will load, of our hatchlings being run over in the major roadway. This is an example of a hatchling disorientation event. So if you're having trouble seeing the hatchling tracks, I'm going to highlight them for you. So you can see this is an instance where a nest was in the middle of the beach. The hatchlings did not go anywhere near the water. They instead traveled towards the land, where we found them crawling along the seawall, crawling in the dune line, wasting precious energy. But there's something we can do to help. There's something called sea turtle friendly lighting that sea turtles are less affected by. And our governing agency is called Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, has a motto for that sea turtle friendly lighting. It's called keep it long, keep it low, and keep it shielded. And quickly, keep it long means use a long wavelength light. That's wavelengths above 560 nanometers. That's LED light that is emitting light in the orange, amber, or red spectrum. They are less likely to be attracted to that light, and they're more likely to be able to orient correctly towards the water. Next, we want to keep it low. We want to keep the wattage and the lumens of the light low for the necessary purpose. And we also want to keep it low to the ground so the turtles are less likely to see the light source itself. Finally, we want to keep the light source shielded so they're less likely to see that point source of light. And it's important to mention here that all three of those guidelines must be met in order to be considered sea turtle friendly light. So I want to provide an example of sea turtle friendly light so you really understand what we're asking for. So you can see under the before image, this is an example of a property up in the Panhandle of Florida prior to a retrofit that was completed by the Sea Turtle Conservancy. It's another nonprofit organization based out of Gainesville, Florida. And you can see at this property that there's a lot of white artificial light. Up on the top, you can see some ceiling mounted lights, a lot of interior white light. That allows the property owner to see about their property, but it's also very attractive to our sea turtles. So it was very likely that we would find hatchlings on this property. The after image shows what the property looks like as a sea turtle friendly property. So we're certainly not asking people to turn their lights off. We understand that safety and security and insurance liabilities are an important consideration. We are simply asking people to change the type of bulbs and fixtures they are using. So this after image is a sea turtle friendly property. They are using light in the amber spectrum, and they're using fixtures that are downward directed, and they are shielded. So even at these properties, the sea turtles are less confused by this light. They're able to correctly orient towards the water as they normally would. But can sea turtles really see a difference? I mean, that just looks like a different colored light to us, right? So what's the big deal? Well, quickly I want to do a lighting demonstration with you, and I hope you will participate. I'm going to show you a couple different lights, and I want you to look at them with your naked eye, and then I want you to look at them with your handy-dandy light card that I provided to you. So first is a white artificial light. So don't look directly at the light, but use your naked eye first. So this could be an example of a typical white light that might be installed on somebody's property on the outside, so they can see maybe their walkway at night. And you can very clearly see that. People use that all the time. This is an example of a sea turtle friendly light. So you can see it's in a shielded fixture, and the bulb itself is an LED light that's emitting in the amber spectrum. I just want you to show that it's on before we do the next part. All right, now I want you to look at that same light with your sea turtle filter, and that will allow you to see what a sea turtle sees. So look at that light where your special guide. Can you see the light? Yeah, you can. So sea turtles see that very clearly. They're going to be very attracted to that light. They're probably going to go towards that light instead of the water. Next, I want you to look at this light. Can you see it? How about now? No, you cannot. So that is less attractive to them, and they're more likely to orient towards the water. So it does make a difference the type of lights and fixtures we are using out on our beaches. And that goes for city-owned property too. Things like street lights, public parking lot lights, public restroom lights. Those affect sea turtles just as much as any property. Other types of artificial lights can affect turtles as well. Things like flashlights and cell phone lights. Everyone's probably seen the flashlight parade on the beach at night with guests or tourists looking for ghost crabs. That can affect our hatchling sea turtles in particular. So you can find that they will be crawling towards that flashlight or that cell phone light, just like they would any other artificial light source. So we ask that people try and to let their eyes adjust to the night and try not to use those cell phone lights and flashlights. But if they feel like they need it for safety or security, they do sell red LED headlamps at hardware stores, and we encourage people to use that light instead. People can report sea turtle sightings during this nesting season. They can use the FWC Wildlife Alert Hotline anywhere in the state of Florida that will route to the correct organization. They can also call Clearwater Marine Aquarium. We monitor from the city of Clearwater through the city of Treasure Island. That's about 21 miles of beaches. And they can call our rescue hotline at that number that is monitored 24 hours a day. The city of Belleair Beach also has these lovely signs at all of their public beach accesses that tell our tourists and our residents about the do's and don'ts of sea turtle nesting season, and it provides those same phone numbers if they'd like to call in a concern. And these signs are also located at our nest site specifically, so they do provide the basic do's and don'ts at that nest site, and to please call those numbers in case they want to report something. And again, I think it's important to mention here that when we're talking about lighting, to please consider reviewing your city-owned properties, things like Morgan Park, your street lights. Those all can affect sea turtle hatchlings and our adults from orienting correctly. So I highly recommend that you review that when we're talking about retrofitting our street lights. We're happy to talk to you about what we can do to improve the lighting at city-owned properties. And with that, I say thank you very much for listening to me, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Flynn. I'll tell you what, let's go to the citizens. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Flynn?
Hi, Tammy Lavenda, Belleair Beach Community Foundation. I'll just say I've spoken to Lindsay, and if you want to go to our community website, we do have part of the Adopt a Turtle Nest program. This is on there, so if you want to take a look, and it has some of her information.
Any others? Council? Yes, Mike Sale.
Yeah, I had some emails specifically about Gulf Boulevard. I mean, that's really, the lights aren't owned by us. I mean, what should we do? I mean, we can't just say, hey, replace all the bulbs.
You can. There's an ability to do that now. Duke Energy has a wonderful sea turtle lighting specialist. His name's Michael Smith. He's specifically working in this area to help retrofit street lights. So yes, it's true that you don't own the lights. You probably lease them from Duke. They have the ability to retrofit all of those street lights with sea turtle friendly bulbs and shields.
My question would be, are they providing the funding as well?
No. However, I believe he did mention that he is talking about potentially doing some sort of, and this, I may be misspeaking here, so please bear that in mind. But he was talking about some sort of payment system too. So Duke has been really good about working with municipalities about this. They want to help with this sort of situation, so they may be able to help in some sort of payment plan, if you will.
Okay, just be asked if maybe the city manager just gets in contact, just as long as we have a, there's a number out there so we understand that impact, if we work to go along that route.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do that.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Baker.
Are the blue lighting that's being replaced, is that sea turtle friendly?
Blue lighting is not sea turtle friendly. In fact, it's one of the colored lights, besides white lights, that is most attractive to turtles. So blue light, green light, purple light, very attractive to our turtles. So they're going to be drawn towards that instead of crawling away.
Because I had some residents ask me, what is the blue lighting? I said, I have no idea. They thought it might be for mammals or sea turtles.
No, that's a problem actually in the land, and Duke's been replacing those as they find them. It's a technical issue.
The other thing is, our beaches get battered year after year, and I see, especially from 1st to 19th Street, there's very little beach left. So you guys come out, you put up a nice little barricade. A mild storm comes, takes that barricade right out. What happens to that nest?
That's a great question. So what happens when our barricades are lost? We have a couple of methods that we use to refine the nest. So we're very fortunate that a bank gave us a grant to purchase special GPS units. They're called Trimble TDC 150s. They're sub-meter GPSs. So instead of knowing our GPS location of our nest down to 10 feet, we can now know them 4 to 6 inches. So if we were to lose all of those nest markers, we can use those GPS units now to, just like a compass, to refine our nest. So we're very thankful for those funds. But we also place secondary markers in the back beach to use as a backup as well.
So those nests aren't washed out?
No. Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. So nests can take some washover, so long as that water is drained out fairly quickly. You can think about it like if we were in a pool. So we have to be able to surface debris every now and again in order to be okay. But if we go sit under the water for too long, we run out of air eventually. It's very similar with our eggs. They exchange gases with the environment down in the bottom, and if they sit under the water too long, they can no longer do that.
Just one other thing. Has Clearwater Marine Turtle Protection Act or whatever gotten involved with trying to get beach renourishment since we have no beach, they're not going to come here?
Say that one more time for me.
Has the Clearwater Marine or the Sea Turtle Protection Society, the Sea Turtle Conservatory, are they involved trying to get beach renourishment? Because I don't know if they reached out to the Fed, because we're not going to get anything for at least 2 more years.
That's a great question. We do our best to make sure that our federal agencies are well educated on how our sea turtles use the environment, as well as our nesting our seabirds and shorebirds, because our sea turtles are not the only marine animal that are utilizing our beaches to nest. So I think it's very important that we do our due diligence to educate our stakeholders about how the beach is utilized.
Thank you.
I have a question. Have you had any interactions with the Army Corps of Engineers?
Yes.
Yes. And how did that go?
Well, our main interaction comes from working with them during the 2018 renourishment project. So we had communications with them during that project.
And what is their take and yours on the value of nourishment for the sea turtle population?
Good question. So sea turtles need sandy beaches ultimately to nest successfully. I think our Pinellas County Environmental Management would agree that typically our beaches are erosional beaches. So we can expect that our beaches will lose sand over time. Now, how full disclosure, sea turtle nesting can be negatively impacted in the short term with beach renourishment because typically here in Pinellas County, renourishment projects happen during the sea turtle nesting season. So it's sometime between May and October. And that typically happens because other areas like the east coast of Florida, for example, gets much higher nesting density than we do here. We can expect 200 to 300 nests in our area in the season. They can expect tens of thousands of nests in their area. So typically they are given priority for renourishment projects in the off-season, sea turtle nesting season. So we are then asked to do those projects during the season. That negatively impacts our nests because we are required to relocate them. So we don't want a bunch of sand dumped onto the sea turtle nest because the hatchlings would not be able to crawl out successfully. So we have to, when they're laid, we have to dig them up and transfer them to an area that will not receive sand. Anytime you do that, you can affect the hatching and emerging success of those eggs, which can affect the number of hatchlings that you're going to produce. So while we certainly do our utmost to make sure that those nests are well protected, it can impact them. However, renourishment projects typically offer wider beaches for our sea turtles to nest. So there are negatives and positives to that project.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No?
A couple quick ones.
Yes.
So I'm assuming then, so the actual nesting always takes place at night?
Typically, some species can lay their nests during the day. That's the critically endangered Kemp's Ridley sea turtle. And we have gotten Kemp's Ridley nests in our survey area. We got them to your north, but we do get those very rare nesting species here, and they nest during the day, but majority at night.
How about the hatching?
Hatching happens at night. You get the very rare mixed signals that the hatchlings think it's nighttime and it is not, and you get a day hatch out, but 99% of it is at night.
When you guys ran across those particular hatchings that were disoriented, so what do you guys do at that point? Do you pick them up and take them to the water?
Certainly, it depends on the condition of the hatchling and what's going on. So we do have a 24-hour hotline that we ask the public to call. We will respond to those calls 24 hours a day. We assess the situation, try and locate those hatchlings, and we will either release them with approval from our veterinarian, or we will bring them to the aquarium for veterinarian evaluation. Sometimes they look very tired and very weak. Sometimes they might have some sort of injury, maybe from a predator or something like that, so they need to be seen.
So the best thing for us to do, if we were to see that, is not pick them up and take them to the water and call you guys.
Correct, absolutely.
Well, something you didn't discuss is when they hit the water, it's no guarantee they're going to survive. They are food to the fish out there. So just, talk about that.
Okay. So we can expect among the hatchlings that reach the water that 1 in 1,000 hatchlings will survive. That's 0.1%. So they could be predated. We truly don't know the extent to what happens to them out in the water. It's hard for us to research that, but they can be predated by fish and bird species. Sometimes they're too weak from, being disoriented on the beach. If they just so happen to make it to the water, they may no longer have the energy reserves to make it out there. So it's critically important that we make sure we do our best to protect all of the hatchlings and try and get them to the water, because only 0.1% of them will survive into adulthood.
All right, thank you, Ms. Flynn. We're running a little short on time, but I greatly appreciate you coming. A very educational and enlightening conversation about sea turtles.
Thank you.
You are welcome to come back next year and do this presentation again.
I will be here.
Thank you very much. All right, we are on to item 7, which is the quarterly board reports. Ms. Let's begin with the Board of Adjustments report from Mr. Mike Kelly.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Mike Kelly, board chairman. Since we're talking about the quarter, January, February, and March, the Board of Adjustments started off with a bang, having a variance meeting in January for an issue on 22nd Street on a new house that's under construction. In March, we were supposed to have another hearing on an appeal of an administration appeal by our city manager. It was deemed to be postponed by our city attorney for further work with the resident. So March was canceled, but coming up in April, next week, we have a variance for a pool, and in May, we also have another variance for a pool on the same issue that I harp on all the time about Crown of the Road. So that's to be discussed whenever the council so deems it. So we're moving along, having a good quarter. Any questions?
Council. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the Citizens Advisory Committee. Mr. Ron Seganek.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Citizens Advisory Committee met 2 times this quarter. February 22nd, we met to review and recommend financing options to accelerate multi-year capital improvements for the city related to street resurfacing and stormwater projects, which will be presented later this evening in the agenda. Secondly, we met as the Audit Committee on March 22nd. That was to review the annual comprehensive financial report that was prepared by the city auditors, Saltmarsh. The committee recommended delaying that approval until the full reports and the financial statistics are added to the audit.
Council. Questions?
Thank you.
We'll see you shortly. All right, next up is the Park and Recreation report, Tammy Levin.
Good evening, everybody. Quick update for Park and Rec Board, January through March. We welcome 2 new members, which we're happy to have. We had 3 successful beach cleanups. We welcome everyone that comes every month. We're thankful for them, and to everyone that comes on a regular basis, and to our guests. Always happy to have people there. January, we had our 2nd annual Health and Wellness Fair, which went very well. We had some tried and true returning from the first one that we had, and we had some new people out, which was great. We've already started booking people for 2024. If anybody has a connection with the Mole Patrol, please call me, because I'm really trying to get them here for next year. A new program that we started this quarter was the new resident welcome bags, because it became apparent when everyone was trying to get off the island that there were people that didn't know that they needed a hurricane pass to get off, or they move here and there's so many things that you're doing to try to move. So we put together like a nice little welcome bag, and then it has all pertinent information that they need for city information. And then Aaron made door hangers, and then we hang them on the door for them to come to the City Hall and pick them up. So something new that we started. We are right in the middle of a park survey for this quarter, so our board goes out, we look, we spend significant time in every single looking for the good, the bad, safety issues, and then we do a recap with the city manager, and we work on that list diligently throughout the quarter. Bel Air Beach merchandise. We have the things we have right now. We're looking for something new. If anyone has any suggestions, or if they're looking for something, I think I might have mentioned it before, but we're looking into like the Yeti-like cups with the Bel Air Beach logo on them, I think, for something new. And then fall events. We have our 3rd annual Halloween on October 28th. We have our holiday social on December 4th. We have our 2nd annual Mayor's Chili Cook-Off on December 10th, which is a Sunday this year. And then we'll have our 3rd annual Health and Wellness Fair on January 13th. So, are there any questions?
Council? Yes.
What what was the company you referenced, the mole?
Oh, it's through Mostyn's, the Mole Patrol, so it's like a traveling, like, dermatologist. So they check like moles and skin, the Mole Patrol.
Gotcha. I thought you were talking about moles on the ground.
And I thought it was a cool band.
It probably is somewhere, but.
I do too, thank you.
Would any dermatologist work, or that you want the mobile?
No, any dermatologist would work. We've had a hard time getting a dermatologist here, but they're kind of like, they have a kind of like the blood donator mobile. They would be in the parking lot. And then you could actually go in and get a checkup as opposed to just talking to a dermatologist but yeah, we would love any dermatologist. So, thank you.
Thank you. Now we're up to the planning and zoning report. Do we have a planning and zoning report tonight? Nope. All right. Moving right on to item number 8. This is the city attorney report. Mr. Moore, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Always a pleasure. Since our last meeting, our office has been tracking legislative session very closely. As recently as last week, I made a presentation before the Big C concerning one bill of particular interest to many beach communities, though with less impact here, which is Senate Bill 714 and its House corollary, House Bill 833, concerning short-term rental regulations. The Cliff Notes version of it is you folks have grandfathered protected provisions prohibiting short-term rentals in certain zoning districts. Not every beach community and not every community in Florida is so fortunate, and the landscape for those outside of that protective bubble is ever-changing and often unsatisfying. And at present, there's a bill proposed that would change that landscape further. It's being sponsored in the Senate by Senator DeSigley from locally. The bill seems to presently be stalled in its committee hearings, but as session is still only halfway through, so it may gain traction. We continue to monitor those. One that affects you folks particularly is House Bill 37 and CSCS Senate Bill 774, which concerns financial disclosure forms for elected officials at the local level. Until now, and perhaps Ms. Livingstone may be the only one who's unfamiliar with this to this point, you've filled out Form 1 financial disclosures. There are different forms for the financial disclosures, and the current legislation, which is gained a lot of traction. I believe it has already moved through one of the two chambers and is likely to move through the other, would have you fill out Form 6. Form 6 gets much more granular in its attention to your finances, including assets in excess of $1,000, liabilities, your interest holdings in businesses and the like. So that is understanding the narrative behind it is increased transparency of interests in local government. Of the counter narrative that's been offered to is the chilling effect it may have on those willing to go into public service, knowing how open their affairs may be. Another set of bills that we're tracking closely is what was Senate Bill 1372 and House Bill 1321. It's not moving in the House, so this is at least what I consider to be good news, but it was a bill that would render local elections open to partisan advertisement and partisan elections. In the event you felt local elections weren't contentious enough, there was a potential to add another layer to that. That seems to be stalling, but again, things can move in session rather quickly or become riders on other bills, so we will keep tracking that. The other bill that we're looking at very closely is Senate Bill 170, and it's House Bill 1515. To me, this is of the greatest consequence to the business we do here together. Senate Bill 170, and which has already passed the Senate, and House Bill 1515, which is headed to the floor of the House, would require any adopted ordinance to have a business impact statement. It does not state what expertise or detail would be required. It gives some values or factors. How those would be determined and substantiated remain to be seen. Of added concern to that is not just, hey, there's one more step to getting ordinances adopted, but most tellingly, up until now, there's been a statutory element on the books concerning ordinances that are preempted And when somebody challenges an ordinance and says, hey, it's been preempted, that was an addition in the last 3 years. And if you kept an ordinance on the book after being told it was preempted and were challenged, you faced exposure to attorney's fees as a community for the plaintiff's attorney's fees. That language has been enhanced to say if it's arbitrary or what was the other word, frivolous, I believe was the word, arbitrary, frivolous, or preempted. And then some litigant brings suit against the city to challenge its ordinance, you face exposure to fees. And not only that, but while during the pendency of that suit, you have to stay the enforcement of the ordinance. So if somebody said, if you pass something tomorrow, somebody challenges it, you cannot enforce it while that challenge is being resolved by the courts. I imagine the courts will have to give these priority. However, our courts are already taxed, and the tort reform, if you've not seen the news coverage on that, while depending on where you sit on that has been seen as a positive, it has resulted in a massive influx of litigation to local dockets, at least in the short term. The courts are trying to figure out how to handle that because, and this is a separate bill, but the tort reform that went through changed the period for negligence suits from 4 years to 2 years. So plaintiffs' attorneys who were sitting on things watching this legislative session suddenly said, well, I've got like 2,000 cases in the backlog, I'm just going to get them all filed right now. And so there's been an influx of litigation, and we've seen that in some of our cities as well. Cities that haven't seen suit in a decade have 2 or 3 pending. But getting back to the Senate Bill 170 and House Bill 1515, the business impact and mandatory stay elements are peculiar and may serve to further cripple the home rule elements of what you do here, especially as a smaller community, having to forecast business impact statements. You notice how those findings end up being leveraged later, either for or against you. So that is to say, we continue to track this. As I have substantive updates, I will continue to provide them either in writing or otherwise to make sure you have timely updates on session. The most notable news, though not necessarily specific to municipalities, though of course with impact on our deputies and otherwise, was the concealed carry changes, which go into effect in July when you do not need a concealed carry permit to carry a firearm in the state of Florida going forward. And I don't say that with any editorialization, just in past, be aware. And so outside of that, we, because I have a feeling if I don't say anything, I will get asked. At the last meeting, there was some lengthy exchange concerning the property with the antenna structure. His attorney is presently on vacation this week and expecting to get us a statement on or before April 14th with a substantive submission. Again, the antenna tower is not being erected during that time, so that's a little leniency and some of the urgency there, if you will, but it does not mean that it is not being addressed or resolved. That is the current status of that. I did communicate to the extent my memorandum at our last meeting had some fields of inquiry. I communicated those and more to his attorney, and he's since been in touch with Kyle. They are exchanging emails and have exchanged emails. It's not radio silence, but that matter continues to move forward. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Any questions or comments?
Actually, this is random. Can somebody unplug that light before it burns through the cord, please? Thank you.
Actually, I was going to suggest just a brief pause in the meeting. So if you needed to remove your equipment, Ms. Flynn, you're more than welcome to. I'm not going to make you wait through the whole meeting if you have something to do.
I thought she was just riveted by the presentation. It's fine. Mayor, I believe Member Baker had a question or concern.
Mr. Baker.
To follow up on the tower, are you saying he applied for a permit or he still hasn't?
He has not. His complete permit submission is forthcoming. One of the delays, if you will, or on top of his just personal leave, was one of the questions that we asked very specifically that goes to this inquiry is not only what is the capacity in terms of height and signal for this antenna structure, but what is his actual need? If he only needs to, for example, the analogy I gave in speaking with some of you is, when I was in middle school, I had a basketball hoop. It could have gone to 10 feet. I didn't need it to go higher than 7 for what I was doing, right? And so similarly, he may not need to get the full capacity. And there's a study that he needs to do. I can't remember the term, prop-in study or something. I forget the term of art. thank you, propagation study that needed to be done, and so that allowing some time for that based on the inquiries that we posed. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? City Attorney.
I have a question regarding that House Bill 37. Did you say it looked like it was going to pass, or?
Yes, House Bill 37, and let me just pull up, I have all these in. That's the financial disclosure one. Yeah, I have several tabs here. I want to make sure that I'm speaking to the right one. So the Senate bill is 774. That bill has gone through at least 2 of its committees, and it's heading to it's gone through Ethics and Elections, and it's gone through the Rules Committee, 16-4 vote. It's pending reference review. So it's going to that Senate floor, is for the Senate version. And then it's the related bill of House Bill 37. House Bill 37 has favorable it's in its last committee, I believe, State Affairs Committee, and so likely to at least see its way to the House floor. Whether it passes, I can't say, but the other element to all of this is good, bad, or indifferent. You have a party that has a supermajority in the legislature, and the same party is in power in the governor's seat. Which is to say, if leadership wants something done, it's almost certainly getting done. There's not going to be a lot of surprises with split votes, or hey, that was came close, but one person came across the aisle. If leadership wants something done, it's likely going to be done. By the rate that this has moved through the committees and the discussion that's been happening on these, they've generally been passing along party lines, and it is moving. And there's still roughly a month left in session, so very likely to get to the House and Senate floor. And if the votes thus far in committee are any indication, likely to pass.
Well,
Not a certainty. Again, I'm no soothsayer, but that's.
I hope that the voters pay attention and speak to our representatives, because in our small town, you'll get no one running for office with this type of financial scrutiny.
And I think that's the goal. I really do think that is the goal, is to drive out these small municipalities. I've had several conversations with people around the county, and just like the lawsuit, the maximum penalty that they could be awarded, the lawsuit, you're talking about, what is it, 200,000? They're talking about
It's presently 200,000.
raising it to 2.5 million.
That has been proposed. That one has not moved quite as much, the sovereign immunity cap extension, but yes, that is on the table.
That's a store closer for us.
It has the potential to be in any number of these things, and I know Mayor Gaddis was present for my presentation at the Big C, and at the risk of getting too much within a soapbox or a platform, I'd just say the current trajectory of this legislative session and the more recent ones presents at least, if not an existential threat, certainly an existential concern for smaller communities. And you see that in the public comment we're seeing, not just here but in other communities, of people lamenting the loss of their neighborhoods and just having streets, whether that's short-term rentals, home-based businesses, property rights protections, and everybody saying, well, what about my property rights? They always seem to be in competition, and you're starting to lose the ability to cultivate and sustain the unique character of each of these small communities that we've developed that has made this community and communities like it across Florida so attractive. And so, I to the extent I can make a statement to you as a council and to your public is recognizing that your remedy isn't always here. We've been taught in civics that the government that governs local governs best, or governs closest governs best, and that's your local government. So much of that is being recaptured, if you will, by Tallahassee, and the remedies that people come to you and say, why don't you guys fix this? And then you folks run, and then you meet some poor sap like me who tells you, yeah, all the things you wanted to do you can't do because Tallahassee says so, and they get to say so. I'm not suggesting otherwise. In our system of government, they have the ability to take those things back, and they whereas that was done as the exception, it seems to be the rule.
It's beginning to make the state of Florida lose its luster, as you noticed it. And they're taking our character away, and unfortunately, they don't listen to us. They don't listen to elected officials on the municipal level. I think that the only people they will ever listen to are the voters. Sorry for the negative comments there.
Yeah.
Mr. Davis.
Just briefly, Mr. Moore, would you like to address briefly the situation of the letters and the emails that we received this week about the signs and the, I guess, protesters?
Because that's been added as an agenda item, I'll withhold until we get to that agenda item. But thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
Last year, when the inspection requirement was passed for the condos 3 stories and up, there was talk that it might be readdressed this year. Is there anything that looks like that's happening?
Excellent question, thank you. I don't remember and have not written down the bill number, and I can follow up with you on that. It is being revisited, which is one of the reasons why, to the extent local jurisdictions were trying to advise or be advised about the issue, everybody's kind of being told, hold on, wait and let's see, because while ostensibly it was with the bill or statute that Member Natera was referencing was a bill done post-Surfside on mandatory inspections of condos over X height or floors, and the entire regime around that every 20 years, 10 years if it's this, and all that stuff that came out. Some of it was well-intentioned, and as with much legislation that's done in a reactive and accelerated pace, people after the fact realize, like, hey, it says this, but it doesn't really put that onus on anybody. Whose responsibility is it to do this? And it says a municipality must, but then there's no timeline, there's no, how do I know what to do? And so yes, there is some legislation being proposed and discussed this session. No, I don't have a specific recollection of its terms, so I'll make sure to get that update to you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the city attorney? All right, thank you very much, Mr. Moore. Now we're up to item number 9, city manager report. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to start off with the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding. We just had a progress meeting on March 29th. Unfortunately, we're still kind of waiting on the materials to get here. Duke Energy has contracted those materials. They just do have to not have a confirmation on the date. But the undergrounding contractor is very confident that as soon as he has the materials, he's going to get started on this. So when I have a date of the actual progress breaking ground, or the project breaking ground, I will make it known so you guys are aware. The Gulf Boulevard buoy replacement for the new zone that we created with the ordinance, those are now installed. We installed the 16 newly labeled buoys. We had to bring them in based on the beach erosion to get that 300-foot distance, so the line is actually a little closer than it was the previous buoys. The city staff is planning to remove the remaining old idle wake buoys. In the meantime, those are actually outside of our new created swim zone, so they're not actually causing confusion within that zone. The stormwater improvement projects, as we have on the agenda tonight, we have a bank note resolution. The City Hall generator, I told you I would get some side-by-side quotes of the portable unit we discussed and the original unit, which was on the generator stand. I did see both of them come in on my email today, rather than during this meeting. So the prices are holding pretty much where they were. Again, it's a 15-day price period that they're giving. I want to follow up with one of the vendors on some of the specific questions we had concerning the fuel tank and some of the warranty, but I will get that emailed out to you this week. Children's playground replacement, that will be up on back to April 21st, so I'm very hopeful that's going to be fine this month. Started working on the personnel policy. We currently have a personal policies and procedure manual as well as an employee handbook. What I've noticed over the years of working here is there is a lot of the same material covered in both documents. One document will have more detail in one section, the other one will have more detail in another section. And there is some areas that it isn't congruent. So what I'm having done by the Kearns Group is to update and combine those documents so that we have a more ready resource to look at personal matters and make sure that we're where we need to be as far as how employment laws change. After they have combined the documents, then we'll have it reviewed by the city attorney. I'm working on a grant policy, which would be an administrative policy, which will outline when we have a project come before us and we're looking at funding, how we approach it, and a formal process of how we look for other funding methods, before we lean into our budget. So, and also cover some of the ongoing grants that we have throughout the year that we plan on getting every year, and how we go about that. I'm hoping to have that. It'll be a future work session. For the next work session, I wanted to start presenting an example of what I see this scorecard initiative to be, to summarize where we're at in our projects, the strategic plan, how our finance ties into it, and then also had a code enforcement element. So that I will be presenting to you at the next work session to get some feedback. And I just wanted to follow up on the ICMA, FCCMA development. I actually misquoted the dates in this report. The April 13th or 11th to 13th, I will be at the floodplain conference. I will be going to the Florida County City Managers Association conference May 30th through June 2nd. And I've been in touch with the ICMA. There is a level of experience credits you have to reach. They told me that they would provide a report based on where I am at, so I have a realistic timeline. And also, I'm waiting for the leadership development program that they offer to be reimagined. They've told me it was supposed to be this year, early January. Then I was last told in April that they will have that program, where you can start to register for it. What that will do is it'll provide education for me, and also at the same time reduce the amount of years of experience that will be. It'll count towards the experience credit to getting towards credentialing. It was mentioned the traffic study and the citizens' comments. I've been in touch with Johnson County and Tom Washburn and some of his employee and engineers, and we did a doodle poll to find a meeting date to meet on site at the intersection. The dates I selected, because I have the conference, was April 18th and April 19th. I did ask if Councilmember Roberts could attend that meeting, since he was involved in the meeting with Tom before that. So I will follow up on that. Park Mobile, we have everything turned in necessary to get started. They have proof for the signs that we're going to install. The last thing, I saw the email come in, I was getting a bank letter for the ACH depositing. So once I send that to them, they told me the timeline would be about 3-week time to make that conversion. And that's all I got.
Council? Mike Saylor.
When we selected you as city manager, we also took on the responsibility to make sure that you're being mentored, giving you advice, suggestions, et cetera. I mean, we talk daily, but I just wanted to point out, you found a problem here with the personnel policy. You basically were extremely proactive. You found a need, matched the parties that would contribute most to this effort. And I just wanted to point it out that that's a really, that's an outstanding effort. It shows insight, and basically at a level well above you. So I just wanted to compliment you on that. And I hope that you're collecting these city manager reports, because we'll talk later about evaluations. And these really are a key part of your evaluations. And just a brief timeline, what I've seen your performance so far has been thoroughly outstanding, professional, at a range well above your age. Very well done. Just wanted to publicly acknowledge your efforts and the outstanding efforts on behalf of the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the city?
Following up on Mr. Sable's, I've heard nothing but good things from the residents about you too. I agree your evaluations we'll be looking at, but since you're doing such a fine job, I don't think we should be holding you to that 2-year wage freeze, and I hope this council gives you a raise this year.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. So you had mentioned that you had contacted Tom Washburn, which is wonderful. And so did he get back to say he was good with 18th and 19th, or was still waiting?
I'm going to follow up on that because I filled out the survey immediately, but I haven't heard, so I'm going to give him a call.
Okay, that would be great. And one other quick question. Has the city finalized who we're going to use as the engineering firm for the stormwater improvement projects?
No, we're not there yet. I'm planning on getting design proposals from all 6 firms, but I want to really look at them.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. Riefler, we had a brief conversation a few days ago concerning the fines and metering and what we were projecting to the public parking lots. Are you in a position where you can discuss that?
So we did have a meeting, and all said and done, the Army Corps is going to be able to provide some administrative guidance for further contracts and agreements for beach renourishment. Having presented where we stood as a city and what we were doing with our rates and all that, they did not upfront see any major issues. And they were able to justify what we were doing because it wasn't violating the policies that they feel are necessary to keep it open to the public. So the meeting went well, and I'm looking forward to the guidance that they provide, because it's going to clear up some confusion among all the municipalities that are involved with the nourishment program.
I can find it interesting that they only want to discuss beach nourishment whenever we're trying to increase the fines and parking rates.
That's half the point there.
Interesting. All right, any other questions or comments for the city manager? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Riefler. All right, now we are on to item number 10, which is the city clerk report.
I just want to do a follow-up on the quarterly reports, the audit committee and the planning and zoning board, that we will be getting meetings with them so that we can get those 2 things to city council. So we'll be setting up those meetings. And the city attorney is going to be doing the Government in the Sunshine presentation on Wednesday at 5:30 for all the boards and committees, but the public is welcome too. And that's all I have.
Any questions or comments for the city clerk? Yes, Mr. Roberts.
So Patty, is that sunshine presentation, is that required yearly by everybody, or is that a one time?
It is required annually for our elected members, and I believe extends to the boards now as well. But I'm not sure about that, but definitely to our elected members. This training that we're doing on Wednesday is not towards that credit, because this is sort of a Cliff Notes version. The 4-hour course that you took at EMO in years past, or is offered online through the FLC or through various other vehicles, is always available, but you do have to complete that annually for you folks. This one is intended more to make sure that top to bottom our teams know about their obligations, duties, responsibilities as public or semi-public officials as it relates to public records, sunshine law. In my tenure here, I've not had the opportunity to meet with all of those boards, and we've already in this 1 year had new members come on, and hopefully establishing a pattern of, as we get new members, always bringing them through a sort of a brief orientation of sorts in that regard.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments for the city clerk?
What's Form 1 do for us? We're talking about financial forms. The Form 1, what does that do for us? Oh, sorry. When is the Form 1 due for us?
September, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
My recollection is that they begin to distribute those in the summer months.
Okay.
Mine is typically submitted by early July, and I only know that because I always send it as the last thing I do before I go on my 4th of July vacation. Like, oh,
So
I'll do this.
if this is
So you
updated-
usually see that in June. They did change the policy, and with all respect, Patty, if I step on your toes, in the last 2 years, they did change the policy administratively that they tend to send your specific form to your city registered email account. When I say they, I mean the Commission on Ethics and state agency, not they, Patty and Kyle. And so you should be on the lookout for that as we get into June for that form. And if you haven't submitted it by a certain date, Patty or somebody from the city usually starts saying, hey guys, this is coming up, get it in, before July so that you don't have late fees or start getting nasty grams about, why aren't you by that when you receive your form yet.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments for Patty? Nope. All right, so now we're moving on to the consent agenda. This is items 11 through 15. This is for approval of the February 23rd, 2023 City Council work session minutes, approval of March 6, 2023 City Council meeting minutes, approval of March 20th, 2023 City Council work session minutes, acceptance of the 2023 Pinellas County Multi-Jurisdictional Community Rating System Annual Report for Program for Public Information Flood Insurance Improvement Plan and Flood Response Plan, and a proclamation proclaiming April 2023 as National Donate Life Month. Do I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So move for the approval of the consent agenda.
All right, motion made by Mike Sable, second by Frank Baker. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda passes. Now, we are on to the regular agenda, item 16. This is for consideration of Resolution 2023-02. Mr. Mora.
One moment, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, getting that page of the materials. Okay, Resolution 2023-02, a resolution of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, authorizing the issuance of the city's capital improvement revenue note, Series 2023, in the principal amount of $2,120,000, to finance acquisition and construction of capital improvements, including street resurfacing and stormwater facilities. Providing that the note shall be a limited obligation of the city payable from non-ad valorem revenues budgeted, appropriated, and deposited as provided herein. Providing for the rights, securities, and remedies for the owner of the note, authorizing certain officials and employees of the city to take all actions required in connection with the sale, issuance, and delivery of such note, making such determinations as are required to afford the note bank qualified status, making certain covenants and agreements in connection with therewith, and providing for an effective date. This has been a reading of Resolution 2023-02 by title only, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mora. Before we go to citizen comments, would the city manager like to summarize what he just did?
Sorry. So this is a resolution for a bank note, and we, in the last work session, presented with the 5 stormwater phases or projects that were part of our master plan update of 2017. The Citizens Advisory Committee did a lot of work, and Heather, who's here tonight, last year actually contributing into the projections of where the city was at financially, and there's been a lot from residents to want to move these projects along because it's a very important initiative for the city. So the Citizens Advisory Group took that on and found a way that we can healthily finance all these projects and get them taken care of and move forward, and at the same time with a plan to pay back this loan in an accelerated pace.
Thank you. Let's go to the citizens for comments on this particular agenda item. Would anyone like to speak? Just comments. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Kim Shaw Elliott. I live at 121 9th Street. Very pleased to be with you tonight. I'm here to very strongly support the proposal. I want to commend the city manager and the committee that did this work, that they were able to deal with a very complex issue and deal with confidence to be able to present to you a proposal that is critical. What's more important or fundamental to a city purpose than to be able to provide safe streets and things that, so things don't flood away, which is kind of critical here. It's timely. We're facing many environmental issues right now, and it's time that we act now. And it's creative because it's brought a resolution to many issues that we have to deal with, and it's doing it in a way that will actually bring some positive numbers at the end of it. I won't spend a lot of time talking about what the benefits of this proposal are, but in quick summary, what these proceeds will do is will give the city the opportunity to have better pricing. So bidding one big job versus a bunch of smaller jobs is clearly an advantage. You'll have more attention from more qualified providers, and you'll be able to get the better pricing with that bigger job. You'll be able to provide for supplies needed to do this in bulk, rather than, again, a series of smaller jobs. And it'll be able to accelerate completion of these critical repairs. For just 2 years to finish all of our streets, get it over with. We don't know when the next big event will occur. I think it's frightening in terms of what is impending, and having our streets taken care of now is really, really important. And at the end of the day, it's going to give additional savings to the city in that we've had the opportunity to take advantage of some very favorable interest rates for the funds that will be sitting there. So there are two things that I'd like to address about this proposal. One is to make certain that it does adequately address the problem. When we plan, we need to plan for the future. We're not going to recreate what has been done in the past or do what we think is needed now, because we know the future will be different than what it is now. And I would like to make sure that we take the opportunity to adequately address the needs of these flood control measures. My understanding is that the proposal as it sits right now does not have any arrangement for any kind of retaining pool or any kind of tanks that will hold excess water when it comes. And if that's needed, we need to address that now and not rebuild in a way that will already be proven inadequate. So I would like to ask that you take the moment to at least reassess and confirm what the needs for this project are and that they're taken care of now. The other thing is that I would ask that you prioritize 9th Street. So 9th Street somehow was skipped over in the work that has been done to date. 9th Street is the entryway to our beautiful park here. It's the park, it includes city parking, it includes the back entrance to this lovely facility. 9th Street regularly floods. 9th Street, I know, has had property sales even rescinded because of the flooding that occurred right in the middle of a proposed sale. So this is an important issue, it's an important street, and I'd like to ask that you consider 9th Street in this proposal.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you.
Would any other citizens like to comment on this topic? Yes.
Hello, my name is Fritz Spill, 905 Harbor Drive, and I can just say the same thing that Kim just said. It's really necessary. I tried for 2 years to find an answer of why 9th Street was skipped in the first place, and then what happened to 8th and 7th Streets? What have you found out? Is it still flooding? And I still don't know what you are really going to do to prevent the flooding. Those are questions that are still open. Otherwise, I think we all agree that we have to do something, especially in 9th Street. I live at the end, of 9th Street, and every time there is a flood and people are trying to collect the bags, the sandbags, you know, all the trucks coming down the road, they flood my front yard. That is not acceptable. So I thank you for
Thank you,
listening.
Mr. Will. Any other questions or comments from the citizens? Yes.
John Hanson, 22nd Street. I happen to sit on the Citizens Advisory Committee, and I speak very highly of this proposal. One of the things that we also took into consideration, when we contract to do 2 streets at a time, you have the logistics of bringing in the equipment and then removing it. It costs money, that's factored in. One of the things we looked at to do this successively was that would save a significant amount of money. I think it was somewhere around $250,000, $350,000 just in moving equipment in and out of the city if we did it the way we're doing it now. As to the issue of flooding, it's like some other folks have said before, we're not going to solve it. It's not going to go away. We live on a barrier island. The one thing that is a plus is the fact that these drains that go out into the intercoastal have the check valves. So when you have a high tide, it closes the valve and prevents the water from backing up and flooding. It's just one of those things. We're not ever going to solve the problem completely 100% of flooding. It's not going to happen. But this will take care of it in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick. Any more comments or questions from the citizens? Nope. All right, citizens' comments are closed. Before we continue, I'm going to need a motion to approve this resolution.
Motion.
Motion made by Frank Baker. Do I have a second?
Second.
I believe that's that one. Your hand went up anyway. All right, Mr. Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm supporting this funding, although replacing 70-year-old pipes that really never worked, you're going to produce the same effects. You're going to get the same effects unless we do this right. So you need a catch basin, you need pumps. A lot of homes in Harbor Drive, when those pipes were put in, were not there. That means the elevation of that discharge pipe really needs to be raised up, because those check valves that we talk about, they're nothing more than sunny day check valves. When a high tide comes up on a sunny day, the water does not come in the street. When you're getting 3 inches of rain an hour or more, that check valve closes. It will not open until that tide comes down. I live on 8th Street. Discharge pipe was put in way before the houses were built. We never elevated that pipe. That means we have to wait about an hour and a half to 2 hours when high tide comes down for that valve to open up. So we're actually accumulating more and more water because that water will not leave the street. And where does that water go? In your yards, hopefully not your homes. So yes, we need to solve the problem, but we don't need to solve the problem that we didn't create 70 years ago. We need to do it smart. We need to spend the money smartly. We also need, like the man said, mobilization of equipment. Working in this field, it'll cost you anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 to move in equipment. So you need to coordinate one street to be done and another street to start right away. If that equipment is moved out, the permitting cost, the stowing, the removal will cost us anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 per street or per project. So when one street's done, we need to attack that next street. We're going to have to find a contractor and award the same contractor to do all these projects. Because if we have contractor A, and then we have to bring in contractor B, we're already in the hole for mobilization. what I would say.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Other comments? Nope. All right, let's take this to a roll call vote. This is to approve Resolution 2023-02. Ms. Gentry, would you please call the roll? Oh, I'm
Can I
sorry.
make one comment? I've heard that the equipment that we're proposing to put it at the end of 9th Street and put...
I'm sorry, ma'am, I already...
I'm sure...
Citizen comments.
Oh, I apologize, then I'll come back.
You know what, we're about to vote on this. Council, would you like to entertain her comments? Okay, please.
I
please
do
get right in.
apologize.
Just state your name for the record.
Cheryl Bray, 182 9th Street, Bel Air Beach. One concern I do have, and I parallels what Kim and Fritz has said earlier, 9th Street is crumbling. I've heard that the equipment, we're talking about putting it in the parking lot at the end of 9th Street. To do that, I'm concerned that we're going to see more crumbling. I would really love to see the parking go over here and not take it down private streets. That's my request.
Thank you. And the city manager heard you loud and clear, and I'm sure he will take that into consideration. Okay, now, let's go back to the roll call vote. Patty?
Councilmember Banker,
Yes.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Aye.
Councilmember Zabel,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye. So the resolution passes unanimously. All right, we are on to item number 17. This is for consideration of ordinance 23-02. Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance 23-02 on first reading. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, amending Section 58-38 Fines and Procedures to increase the fines associated with parking violations, providing for codification, severability, and for an effective date. This has been a reading ordinance 23-02 by title only on first reading, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Let's go to the citizens for comments on this ordinance. I see there are no citizens requesting to make comments. We will close citizen comments. And before we move forward, I'm going to need a motion to approve this ordinance 23-02 made by Frank Baker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lloyd Roberts. Mr. Baker, do you have the floor?
Right now, we're looking to charge $10 per hour for parking with a 3-hour max. Our fine right now is $35. Not to be a rocket scientist, so would you rather spend $35 to park all day or spend $10 per hour for 3 hours? So this is well needed to be increased, and I think it should be moved because it just makes common sense.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Other comments from the council? No, and I agree with you also, Mr. Baker. All right, so let's go ahead and take this to a roll call vote. Patty, this is to approve ordinance 23-02.
Councilmember Banker,
Yes.
Councilmember Livingstone,
Yes.
Councilmember Notaro,
Yes.
Councilmember Roberts,
Aye.
Councilmember Zabel,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Shirley,
Aye.
Mayor Gaddis.
Aye. And so the ordinance passes unanimously, and we're authorized to move forward with that.
First reading, Mr. Mayor, it'll come back as second reading.
That's right, I'm sorry. My bad. All right, so now we are on to item number 18. This is for authorization for the city manager to advertise for marina dock improvements. This was placed on the agenda by City Manager Riefler. Mr. Riefler, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So over the years, we have our pilings and our docks facilities out at the marina, and it's been wearing out through the wave action, saltwater, natural things. We've over probably, let's see, about the last 10 years, I've been accumulating money for repair. So a little bit has been spent. Last time was after damage from Hurricane Irma. But prior to that, it was probably pre-2015, I believe, Dolphin Marine actually did an overhaul to the pilings at the marina. So we're getting to the point where it's due. We did a comprehensive inspection. There's 140 marina pilings. Not all of them are city maintained. 64 of them are the slip renters have actually installed for their boat lifts. So that is their responsibility to maintain them. The remaining 76 piles are the city's responsibilities. These function as tie poles, mooring poles, and the supports to the catwalks. The inspection shows where some of the pilings are fine, just need to be cleaned and wrapped. Others need to be completely replaced. And then there was a recommendation, you'll see blue squares, which is to do a concrete jacket. I think that decision was recommended basically because the pilings are located under the catwalk. So I'm requesting the authorization of City Council to go out to bid for the renovation that needs to take place at the marina. Like I said, we've had an accumulation of funding of $52,500. I'm expecting this project to cost somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000. I want to bid it out two ways. One way is to do the 38 rewraps that were recommended, and then 38 complete replacements. So far, in doing research and talking to vendors, I think the replacement option is the better option. But I also wanted to explore the recommendation of concrete jackets, just to weigh out the two options. So that would be doing the 38 rewraps, 19 concrete jackets, and then 19 replacements. So yeah. I included the marina inspection report. Hopefully, I had time to look over it. And then the other thing is that once we get this bid out, we want to share this report to each slip renter to make sure that they're aware of the condition of their boat pilings.
Thank you, Mr. Riefler. Before we continue, I would like to go to the citizens for comments on agenda item number 18. All right, citizen comments are closed, and now we're back to the council. Council, would like to speak on this? Yes, Mr. Roberts.
I just wanted to ask a question. Can you explain to me what a concrete jacket is?
They form around it, I guess, pump out the water and form concrete around the piling. What I've heard.
Existing wood piling?
The existing wood piling. So as we know, concrete does absorb the water. So it provides some protection to that piling, but I feel the brand new pressure treated replacement is probably the better option. I just wanted to explore both.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
So what's the anticipated life expectancy of a replacement versus a rewrap?
That's information that I want to get. I do not have that yet.
Okay. And do we know the cost difference between a replacement versus a clean and wrap?
So clean and wrap, I believe the quote I got from the company that provided the inspection, I think was around $2,000 to $3,000 per piling, and then a complete replacement, I want to say was closer to $7,000, and then the concrete jacket was somewhere in between.
Okay.
But yeah, doing the rewraps, the cleaning of rewraps, it just provides another form of protection around it so that it gives it a little more lifetime, and the ones that aren't deteriorated.
Okay. If not, obviously I'll leave that up to you, Kyle, but if the life expectancy is significant for replacement as compared to a wrap, and we have the funding, then maybe I would recommend that we go ahead and replace them all. So we would have that done and completed now and not have to worry about them for a while.
That's how I feel. And then, if you do a replacement for the ones that are recommended as concrete jacket, which are underneath the deck boards, it'll require a little extra labor of pulling some deck boards and detaching the hardware for the supports, but it would be worth it if we expand the life period.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments for the city manager on this subject? Oops. Okay, yes. What we need to do now. What? I don't think that I actually did a motion on this one. Need a motion on this item. Okay, Leslie Natera, do I have a second? Second by Frank Banger. Leslie, you have the floor.
I think it's obvious that Kyle has done his homework on this and knows what we're looking for and what to do, and I think we need to authorize him to go ahead.
Any other comments? No? All right, so this is for authorization of the city manager to advertise for marina dock improvements. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Edward, you are authorized to proceed.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, now to the good stuff. This is for item number 19, consideration of merit pay increase for city clerk based on annual evaluation criteria. City Manager Riegler.
Okay, so this, you guys were all given the evaluations complete for city clerk Patricia Gentry, and we've gotten all those in for the recommendations. Do you have the summary of? I don't have the actual, are they in my agenda here? Sorry.
No summary, no.
We don't have them in the agenda.
This was the first time that I've seen where we did not receive a summary score of the overall. It just wasn't in the agenda pack. Is that data available?
No, I don't have that. I can get that if you want to take this off. I'm still waiting for one evaluation. So do you want to take it off and
I think it's fair that we are able to see all the scores and see how everyone rated you.
That's fine.
I hate to do that, but would someone like to motion the table, or would you like to proceed?
I will do that if we retro or pay from tonight.
I think that's fair enough. I think that's fair enough.
I'll get all the evaluations together and put together a tabulation.
Okay, well, I can entertain a motion to table if someone will make one.
Motion to table the retro or pay if your evaluations come in.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor to table this item? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll get this resolved next month, and hopefully we can have these maybe for the next work session, just so that we've got them and have ample time to review them. Yes, sir.
Just one quick question, Kyle. So is there a fixed date that this is supposed to, an annual merit increase date for Patty?
She has an anniversary date that merit applies to. Sometimes when you do employee evaluations, they don't have their evaluation exactly on that date, somewhere in that time period nearby, and it retro pays.
Okay, so had we approved it tonight, she would have gotten it when?
I believe it's the beginning of April 1st, that your anniversary date is?
March 7th, I think.
Okay, so it's March.
Okay, so it's based on your anniversary. Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's not let that happen again. I feel terrible, but we have to see everything. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, but that's not on you or them. That's mine. It was mine, that I don't have that ready, so please don't take any responsibility for that. It's all me. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, no apology is necessary. All right, so now we are on to item number 20, which is consideration to support the nomination of Reddington Beach Mayor David Will as the representative to Fort Pinellas for the 10 barrier island communities. What is Fort Pinellas? Fort Pinellas is a land use and transportation planning agency. They guide integrated transportation and land use solutions that sustain economic value by connecting the communities of Pinellas County and the Tampa Bay region. Effectively, they do a lot with traffic and how it may or may not affect us. There are other things that they are into, but that's my biggest concern is traffic and where they route traffic. So before I go any further, I would like to ask the citizens for comments. Anyone like to comment on this topic? Okay, no comments. We'll bring it back to the council. To continue this discussion, I need a motion from the council.
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Shirley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lloyd Roberts. Vice Mayor Shirley, you have the floor.
Well, clearly the beaches need representation. I am not a huge supporter of Fort Pinellas, but I think the beaches get the raw end of the deal when it comes to Fort Pinellas. I would love to see someone from our community be, representation for the beaches, and I don't know the mayor of Reddington Beach, so I may be speaking out of turn by saying he's a good candidate, but certainly someone along the beach and part of the Big C would be a good voice.
Yes. Other comments?
How did David Will become the nominee?
Okay, so let me give you a little backstory. I normally allow everyone to do their comments first, but I'll kind of tell you what's going on. Fort Pinellas, they have so many seats. They pick the 4 largest communities in the county, and each one of those communities automatically get a seat. The barrier islands, all 10 of them only get 1 representative because we're tiny, okay? So I was on the nominating committee for the Big C, and David Will, his name came up. His community is much like ours. They don't have businesses. They have some private areas. They are overran with traffic like we are from time to time. Also, I've gotten to know David Will pretty well, and I trust that I can have influence on David Will and believe that he would look into our best interest as he would his own because they're common interests. And this is really good for us because that's not always been the case. Normally, our representative that's placed by the Big C is always a tourism community. Well, this is the first time that we've had a representative who is not a tourism community, which means we're going to be more fairly represented. There's an even deeper backstory behind this. Also, on the nominating committee, it was not advertised, but the representative from the Tourist Development Council was not reporting back to the Big C. So we also decided to replace that representative or delegate with a new one, and I was selected to attend or to be on the TDC. So what does that have to do with us because we don't attract tourists? Well, it's all about where the money goes that comes in from tourism, and as you know, we are all impacted by all this tourism. So we might as well have some impact on where the money goes, and my number one goal will always be spend the money on re-nourishing our beaches. So for the first time, we have 2 people that are pretty much private communities that don't, they're not commerce communities representing the Big C. And I think it's going to be a great benefit for all the barrier islands to have it done this way. So that's why I recommend that we move forward and approve David Will. Any questions?
So how does the mechanism work from this point? So once we say.
Okay, so what it is that every barrier island has, the Big C has delegates from each community, from each municipality. I'm one vote. However, the way that I cast the vote is if everyone agrees or we have a consensus that, okay, this is what's good for the community. In this case, they're asking, they're going to call a vote at the next Big C meeting, and I will be casting an official vote representing Bel Air Beach in support of Mayor David Will. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, in that case, we need to take a vote. And I can do that very, very plainly just by saying all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, so I will confirm our vote at the next Big C meeting. All right, now we're on to item 21. There's a lot of these delicate votes tonight, so just bear with me as we get through them all. The next one is consideration of selecting council members as voting delegate, alternate voting delegate number 1, and alternate voting delegate number 2 for the Barrier Islands Government Council, known as the Big C. Do I have any citizens from the, any comments from the citizens? Nope. All right, back to the council. Before I begin, I need a motion from the council to move forward with selecting council members for the Big C.
So moved.
Motion made by Lloyd Roberts.
Second.
Second by Mike Zabel. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to do these one at a time. This is consideration for selecting council members for, the first one is voting delegate, which is the role that I'm currently in. Do I have a nomination for voting delegate?
Nominate Dave Gaddis.
Second. Okay, I have a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right, so now I need an alternate voting delegate. Do I have a nomination for alternate number 1? Okay, I would like to nominate Vice Mayor Shirley as alternate number 1. Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Vice Mayor. All right, I have an alternate 2 position. Do I have a nomination for alternate 2?
So didn't we just do that?
Leslie Matero.
Okay, I have a motion for Leslie Matero. Do I have a second? Second. Second made by Frank Banker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, congratulations. Councilmember Matero.
So when will she be called upon to vote?
Dave doesn't make it.
I would say probably never, but I mean, you never know. We could have the flu or something. All right, we're on to item number 22, consideration of selecting a council member as voting delegate for the Florida League of Cities. Let's go to citizens for comments. No citizen comments. They're probably ready to go home. All right, I need a motion on this item.
So moved.
All right, motion made by Jody Shirley. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Lloyd Roberts. Do I have a nomination for voting delegate for the Florida League of Cities?
What is this job? What is the job of this?
Florida League of Cities represents all of us, and occasionally we have, I think really we have 2 big events a year, and it's generally mayors. However, we are more than welcome to nominate anyone we'd like to. So would someone like to make a
I'd like to
nomination?
nominate Dave Gaddis.
Second.
Okay, I have a second for Dave Gaddis. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations to me. Thank you very much. Now we're on to item number 23, consideration of selecting a council member to be our voting delegate for the Suncoast League of Cities. Citizens, you're shaking their head no. All right, I need someone to make a motion for voting delegate for the Suncoast League of Cities.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and do I have a nomination for voting delegate?
Nominate Mayor Dave Geddes.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Okay, now we are on to item number 24, which is to authorize the city attorney to draft an ordinance to address section 38-87 of our city code to be presented and reviewed at our next work session. Would any citizens like to make a comment? They're shaking their heads swiftly. Council, I need a motion to proceed on this.
So moved.
Motion made by Leslie Natero. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Jody Shirley. Councilmember Natero, you have the floor.
I think it's pretty clear because we need to address this and maybe we'll.
Mayor, if I may, please. Thank you. The issue that added to the agenda this evening concerns specifically section 38-87 of the city's code. This issue came up not because of some kind of enforcement action or controversial event that took place in the city, but rather in response to an advocacy group bringing this to the city's attention. Which happens from time to time. I've reviewed the code section at issue. What they've asserted in a roughly 4-page correspondence sent a week ago, today I believe is when we received it a week ago, is that the ordinance suffers various constitutional defects, being void for vagueness and having content-based free speech limitations, an unnecessary limitation or unjustifiable under strict scrutiny analysis, restriction on freedom of association and freedom of assembly. They've asked that we respond to them by April 10th. I will not suggest to you that they are going to sit idly by and wait until April 10th to hear from us, as evidenced by their advocacy in the last few days in the form of press releases and otherwise. That said, having reviewed it, I agree that the ordinance suffers defects and needs revision. What those revisions look like, I'd like a moment to look at what the language presently says and where this community wishes to go. Reviewing the history of this, it looks like the language at issue, the language that is most at issue is 38-87 sub B, which reads that no permits shall be granted by the city manager for the conduct of any commercial, political, or organized event by any person, group, or organizer. That's not the only defective language, if you will, but the language that is most notable. What's interesting to me about that is that this language came in 2018 through ordinance number 1802, which sought, at least ostensibly based on the minutes of the meeting at the time and the agenda materials, to address what at the time was various parties asking to have weddings in city parks and bring chairs and other attendant elements that were perhaps congesting the public gathering areas. I'm not sure how that issue morphed into that language, but that was what the ordinance said. Before that, the language came in, subpart A came in ordinance 0501 as part of an amendment to the city's code that was comprehensive in nature following this city's adoption of a city manager form of government. So all the references to the member or the council member overseeing this was changed to city manager, and then before that, the language goes back to 81, basically to the code's origins on getting permits. And so it's not uncommon to have ordinances requiring permits for larger gatherings or gatherings in certain places with some kind of rational relationship to ensuring that we don't have 5 people show, not 5 people, but 5 groups all agreeing on the same infrastructure at the same moment and creating congestion or controversy that way. And so we can manage our resources, but we have to do so in a manner that is content neutral. Certainly not one that specifically targets political speech. I would shy away from that kind of language, especially as we talk about Reed v. Gilbert and sign codes and the sort of analysis that goes with those free speech The point they've made, and that this advocacy group has made, and I've made in the past, is your streets and sidewalks are traditionally considered public fora, that is where your free speech rights are at their highest. This seems to move in some degree in contravention of that. So yes, I would like the opportunity to amend this ordinance. Yes, I can prepare something for your review at a subsequent workshop or meeting. My only request is if there's a specific issue that this community feels this language is addressing or resolving, that I'm made aware of that so that I capture what you, the legislators, wish to do within the confines of the U.S. Constitution, Florida Constitution, and statutes. The one other thing I would add to this, I'm not remembering the statutory site off my head, there's a similar constitutional challenge and being lodged against a statute that was adopted in the last 2 years, last legislative session, as part and parcel to the Stop Woke Act, and that's not language I'm making up, that's what it was called, addressing protests in streets and in response to some of the public discourse that happened in 2020, there was a statutory change on where people can gather and impede, retard, slow, stop traffic. That is to say, to the extent that was a concern of this ordinance, there's a statute on point. Whether or not that statute will sustain its own scrutiny is something else. But I did wish to make sure you were aware of that context as well, because that did not exist when this was adopted in 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. You're on a deadline, or we are on a deadline to respond to...
Yes, by April 10th. If I'm given your authority to draft an ordinance this evening, what I would respond to them within the next couple of days would be correspondence directing them, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I've received direction to amend this. We intend to amend this, and in so doing, intend to address any apparent constitutional defects or other legal issues, which is to say that we're not, at no point, for what it's worth, at no point do we have any record of citing somebody for violating this. At no point do we have any record, to my knowledge, of any permits denied specifically because, this is a political thing. As some of you even mentioned to me in side conversations, I'm pretty sure I did political speech of some sort on the city side and never had an issue. With that said, I would respond to them and indicate, that is to say that to the extent they reached out to us in the last week, we have not once replied to them and said, this is our ordinance, get lost, we're standing by it and it's fine. All we asked for was the opportunity to review it, and that's what we intend to do.
Great, thank you. We have 2 council members who were actually voted. Would either of you like to just kind of explain why the ordinance was changed? I know we kind of touched on it, but you were there and you may or may not remember.
I wasn't there.
You were not there, so you were not on council at the time.
I don't remember.
You don't remember, okay. Good answer. Okay, well, I just thought I'd give them the opportunity. Would anyone like to, before we go any further, let's see, I need to make a motion on this one, or did we already do it? I'm so lost.
There was a motion in a second, it was open to public.
That's right, okay, great, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I made the motion.
I got completely caught up in that.
I made the motion.
Okay, all right, so would anyone like to make any other comments on this? Okay. We all know why we're here and what we're trying to do, and at least they will know that we are responding to their request and are not giving them any pushback on it. So, that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I apologize for getting caught up in a moment there. Mr. Moore, you're authorized to draft an ordinance to address section 38-87.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Do you think it's possible we will have that draft by the work session?
Remind me, that is the next work session the 17th?
Mr.
Weeks from today?
Yeah, 2 weeks from today.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, Mayor.
Thank you. Sorry to burden you with an extra load there. All right, now we are on to item 25, unfinished business. The unfinished business. I think most of the things that we've been discussing have already been covered, so we're good there. So now we're on to item number 26, which is City Council comments. This one, the Randomizer program has selected Councilmember Livingstone. Take it away.
Thank you. That was a surprise. No, thank you all for being here this evening. Thank you, Kyle, for everything that you do for the city, and Patty as well. We really appreciate you, and we're sorry that we weren't able to pass that on this evening, and we'll make sure that it gets taken care of next time. So.
Next up is Councilmember Natero. No comment. Mr. Roberts, you're up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment based on John's comment earlier, Mr. Hanson. So as you heard from city manager, that he's setting up a meeting with the county representative. So I also just wanted to reiterate to you, there was a comment made at the conclusion of our meeting last month that somebody had recommended, maybe it's best to just let this issue go and not change anything. I want everybody to know that that's not why I was elected. So if there's ever an opportunity to improve something in the city, I'm going to pursue that. I can tell you right now, I feel like you do, that the current design of that system, and not to throw stones at whomever made those decisions previously, this is not a good traffic pattern that's going on now. So I know there's better ways to do it, and I'm confident that working with Kyle and getting input from other city members, we're going to make it better, and working with the county. So if there's improvements to be made, and any final recommendation that we make will clearly be a benefit to the entire city in a discussion. So that's the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Mr. Baker, you're up.
Just briefly, as we began Holy Week yesterday, wish you all a blessed Easter. Pray that all Bellard Beach residents appreciate this masterpiece of God, which by His grace we get the call.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Nicely said. Mr. Zale.
This past month, we had a loss of a friend and many of us in the community and a family member, Ms. Joanne McIntyre. Just want to go with condolences to you, Mr. Mayor, Wendy Michael, and Mr. Bob McIntyre as well. She's a wonderful lady. And secondly, I know it's running over time here, but a lot of you out there are still here with us. We really appreciate that. More importantly, I want to publicly thank each of the council members. I mean, Councilmember Banker, Livingstone, Otero, Roberts, Vice Mayor Shirley, Mayor Gaddis, for what you do. I mean, I was away last week, but you take time out of your family's lives to be here, not only to be here, but to prepare, do the working sessions and everything else. I just want to thank you all for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Zale. Vice Mayor Shirley.
So I'd just like to take a minute to thank a local nonprofit called Shepherd's Village. It's a single-family parenting program just over the bridge in Belleville Bluffs. They sent a group of kids over here to City Hall from Indian Rocks School, Indian Rocks Christian School. It was their missions week, and they did quite a bit of landscape cleanup around City Hall. Kyle can tell us a little more about it, but there's quite a pile of debris that I got a photograph of that they did a really great job and helped the community a bit. And then also I just want to thank all of our boards for giving us a quarterly report. It's nice to hear from everyone. I appreciate it. I appreciate everything that everyone's doing. A little disappointed we didn't hear from planning and zoning again. I know they have a project they're working on, so it would have been nice for them to show up to the meeting today. And thanks for hanging in there, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Shirley. All right, concerning beach nourishment, this month I was able to meet on different days with County Commissioner Chris LaValla and the Pinellas Public Works Director Kelly Levy. They're both on board with 100% funding if the Army Corps will not budge. County Commissioner Janet Long, Kelly Levy, and Indian Rocks Beach Mayor Cookie Kennedy met with Representative Luna, who has confirmed that she will approach the Army Corps from an environmental impact perspective to see if she can gain any traction. So far, I've seen no evidence of any beyond let's just keep our fingers crossed. Mayor Kennedy seemed hopeful at the last Big C meeting, but my gut tells me that county funding and management are the only way that we will get sand anytime soon. If that happens, it will still take at least 2 years to complete the project. For the most part, I would say that I've received very little pushback. However, let's see what happens whenever whenever they finally give us a final, no, we're not going to do this, and you must get all your easements or else. So we'll see how that goes, but I have confidence with a little more influence on the TDC and Ford Pinellas. We may be able to turn up the pressure a little bit more, and we'll see what happens. So let's just keep the faith and wait and see. As always, I'd like to thank everyone who came out tonight, as well as for those who are watching wherever you are tonight. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion adjourned.
Second made by Frank Baker, second by Mike Sable. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, good night, everyone.